Okay, so we're going to have a little think about the female sex act. So we've already gone through the male sex act, so now it's time to think about what's happening in the female. And just like the male, the sexual response follows a very predictable sequence of physiological phases, which are similar to males. And they're driven by neural control of blood flow, so both parasympathetic and sympathetic, smooth muscle, and of course, skeletal muscle. So, just like for the males, we're going to summarize the mechanisms underlying the female sex act. And by the end, we really want you to understand which part of the nervous system dominate each phase. So they are the same as in males. So it's about reinforcement with slightly different systems in place, obviously. So just as a memory of where the external genitalia is, so thinking about the vulva in particular, the vulva is richly innervated, making it very sensitive or highly sensitive to touch. And it's the sensory input from this region that activates the spinal reflexes. Remember the reflexes that go through the spine itself, so into the spine and back through to the reproductive system through that spinal network, that reflex network that trigger sexual arousal. And so the key areas that we need to be thinking about today are obviously the clitoris and the labium majora. So these are the ones that we're going to mainly talk about today because they are two of the major areas, and within the vagina itself as well. They are some of the major areas that become engorged with blood, analogous to the penis in males. So the key point about the clitoris is that actually it's much larger internally than its external visible portion. So just like in males, you have the corpus cavernosum, which is paired, the kind of the paired erectile tissue forming the body of the clitoris. And this is an area that fills with blood during sexual arousal and causes a clitoral erection. You've got the crura of the clitoris, which are basically proximal extensions of the corpus cavernosa, and they are there really to help to stabilize and enlarge the erectile tissue during that arousal. You've also got the glans clitoris, which is the distal tip of the clitoris. Again, this is very highly innervated. But it is not erectile tissue, so its main role is in sexual sensation. You've also got the bulbs of vestibule, which are shown down here. So these are the paired erectile tissue on either side of the vaginal opening. And again, these engorge with blood during arousal. And so they help to narrow the vaginal opening and increase that sensitivity as they start to engorge with blood. And so just like in males, it's the parasympathetic nervous system that stimulates, or the parasympathetic nervous system stimulation that causes arteriolar vasodilation. And that allows blood to fill that erectile tissue. And that engorgement increases the sensory input and mechanical support during intercourse. So just like we did with males, I'd like you to think about what's happening in each of these phases. So the phases are very similar. So you've got the excitement phase, the plateau phase, the orgasm phase, and the resolution phase. Thinking again, we're only thinking about physiology, not behavior and psychology. So I'd just like you to summarize what you think is happening at each stage. So press pause and then we shall go through it. Okay, so first of all, the excitement phase. So again, just like in males, this is driven by the parasympathetic nervous system, causing arteriolar vasodilation. So you get that clitoral engorgement, the labial swelling, and the vaginal lubrication. And the principles, like I said, are the same as in males. So, and you get starting to lead towards that heightened sexual awareness. You move into the plateau phase. And so this is where you're getting that response intensification. So you've still got that parasympathetic nervous system causing that genital vasocongestion, which is your engorgement with blood. But you're also now getting the sympathetic nervous system starting to build. So you're getting an increase in your heart rate, in blood pressure, respiratory rate, and that muscle tension. So it's exactly the same as in males. The erection is being maintained with additional blood flow and engorgement. We then move on into the orgasm phase. And again, just like in males, we've got the sympathetic nervous system building, hitting a threshold. along with the somatic response, which is your skeletal muscle. Remember, this time the orgasm comes without gamete ejaculation. So that's a key difference between males and females, is the with gametes in males, without gametes in females. And again, with intense physical pleasure. It's important to realize that actually some women do expel fluids. So some women don't, some women do. And that fluid tends to come from what's called the Skene's gland, which is a paraurethral gland that gets aroused during orgasm itself. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. And then finally, going on to the resolution phase, where you're getting withdrawal of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that sympathetic activation is also there still. You're getting a reduction in genital vasocongestion because you're removing that vasodilation. But there is that additional vasoconstriction, so stopping blood flow into the organs themselves. And you start the body, the systems start to return to that pre-arousal state. A key thing about this, though, is that re-arousal is possible so you can, there's no refractory period. So re-arousal can occur immediately after orgasm as opposed to minutes or hours, that is the case in males. So we're now going to go through each of these phases in turn. So remembering what happens in the excitement phase, the sexual arousal begins with the parasympathetic mediated vasodilation of the clitoris and the vagina. That increased blood flow causes clitoral engorgement. You get labial swelling. So the images are all up here, so you can think about where each of these areas are. So you're getting clitoral engorgement, so it enlarges, fills with blood. Labial swelling. Okay, so you can see the labia here, they're beginning to swell. And vaginal lubrication. So lubrication is being released from blood vessels within the vagina as they become vasocongested. And basically you release what's called a transudation. So the capillaries lose fluid, which becomes that lubrication. So like I said, you get that arterial vasodilation of clitoris and vagina. You're getting clitoral vasocongestion, just means increased blood engorgement within the clitoris and within the labial swelling. That helps to support the vaginal wall during penetration. So remembering its location, it's supporting the vaginal wall, but it also encloses on it. So therefore, it's increasing the pleasure signaling. As you're vasodilating, that within the vagina, thinking about this, you get what's called vaginal vasocongestion. So more fluid there, but fluid starts to leak out from those vaginal capillaries, and that is what provides the vaginal lubrication. And so that vaginal lumen is basically serving as a lubricant. And that's one of the first features that may be evident of sexual arousal in females. You also get, as I've written up there, that was up there before anything else, the nipples may become erect and breast enlargement, again, due to vasocongestion, so increased blood flow. And also a sex flush is often evident throughout the skin, but often seen above the breast at the base of the neck. So you can often see it in individuals, and you see that kind of sex flush again due to increased blood flow. So after the excitement phase, just like in males, you move into the plateau phase. And this is where the parasympathetic activity continues to maintain that genital vasodilation, while increasing sympathetic activity is being enhanced systematically. So this is why heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and muscle tension all begin to rise. It's also starting to prepare the body for sperm deposition. So as well as the vaginal vasoconstriction, we'll move into the uterine elevation. We'll talk about that in a second. So the key thing here about further vaginal vasocongestion is that it reduces the internal diameter of the lower vagina. And that creates a tightening around the penis, which therefore starts to enhance the sensory feedback and arousal in both partners. So a key thing is you're getting further during the plateau, further vaginal vasocongestion, so greater buildup of blood. Okay, you can see this in this bottom image as well. So in the resting phase, you move into the arousal, and you can start to get this narrowing present. So the vagina. Go back and stop, 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 stop. Let's go back. Okay, so moving on from excitement phase, we move into the plateau phase. So this is where the parasympathetic activity continues to maintain genital vasodilation, whilst sympathetic activity is gradually increasing systematically. So you're basically getting that increase in heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, muscle tension, just like in males. But we're also starting to prepare the body for sperm deposition. This is one of the key features. So you get further vaginal vasocongestion, so further blood engorgement. And later on, you'll get uterine elevation. We'll talk about that in a second. So the further vaginal vasocongestion reduces the internal volume or the internal diameter of the lower part of the vagina. That creates tightening around the penis, and that goes on to enhance the sensory feedback and arousal in both males and in females. The uterine elevation is happening at the same time. So the uterus is beginning to elevate and the cervix moves upwards. And this is a process called tenting. And what this is doing, it's lengthening the vagina and creating space for the ejaculate deposition. So together, these changes optimize both comfort for both partners, arousal for both partners, but also they're providing the conditions for successful fertilization. So we then move on into the orgasmic phase. Sorry, I obviously didn't put these coming down in order. So key things, just look at the top to start with. First phase is we're getting sympathetic triggering of the pelvic muscular contractions. And these occur at the same rate as they do in males. They're occurring about at 0.8 second intervals. There's this kind of consistent rhythmicness to it, so that males and females are both in unison with each other. So they're involuntary rhythmic contractions of these pelvic muscles. There's the heavy breathing and tachycardia that go hand in hand with that orgasmic phase. Remember, in females, there's no gamete ejaculation, and there's also no refractory period. And that means if stimulation continues, sexual intensity only diminishes back down to the plateau phase following orgasm, and it can be quickly brought back up to a peak again. And some women have been known to achieve up to 12 successive orgasms because of this particular lack of refractory period. So, as I mentioned before, some women do release fluid, and this fluid is released from what are called the Skene's glands, and you can see it in this image below. So, so these Skene's glands create a clear alkaline fluid, and the gland itself has ducts that empty into the urethra. So it comes out from the urethra itself. So the fluid itself actually contains some specific products. So it has prostate-specific antigen, or PSA, which is a molecule produced by the prostate gland in males. But it also contains things like glucose as well. So basically, it's similar to the prostatic fluids in males. And physiologically, like I said, there's no female analog of semen ejaculation, but the large volume of fluid that is sometimes released, which can be described online as female ejaculation. This often includes, as well as the fluid released from the Skene gland, it may also include dilute urine from the bladder mixed with those glandular secretions. So that's often termed the female ejaculation, just so you know what that is if you hear those terms. And like I said, we've already said this, it's a glucose-rich alkaline fluid, and it is released from the urethra itself. So finally, so we've gone through the first three phases, and we now move into that resolution phase. And this is where the pelvic vasocongestion and systemic manifestations subside, just like in the males. Physical relaxation occurs, and females start to return towards baseline. But just like I've said, re-arousal is possible because there is no refractory period. So what I would like you to do, just like we did in males, I would like you to have a look at each of these phases. I've shown you the division that is primarily stimulating them in each case, and I'd like you to just tell me what is happening in each stage. So press pause, have a think about it, and then we shall go through it. Okay, so the first phase is excitement. So again, this is on tactile stimulation of parts of the vulva or the whole of the vulva, leading to parasympathetic activation. This leads to nitric oxide release. Remembering nitric oxide is a vasodilator. That leads to genital vasodilation because of that arterial inflow. And you start to get clitoral and vestibular engorgements. So the erectile tissue starts to fill up, and you get that vaginal lubrication occurring as well. So basically, there's vasodilation and an engorgement of the vagina and clitoris. You move into the plateau phase. This is where you're getting sustained parasympathetic activity that helps to maintain the erection, stroke engorgement. You get that continued vasocongestion, so you're getting maximal genital swelling at this point. But at the same time, you're getting a rise sympathetic activity, which is preparing the body systematically. So this is where you're getting that increase in heart rate, blood pressure, skeletal and pelvic muscle tone. They're starting to kick in as well. We then move into the orgasmic phase, and this is now where the sympathetic nervous system has achieved dominance. It's hit threshold and it's now domineering. So it's remembering it's all that spinal reflex. We're also getting an increase in somatic outflow. So that's your skeletal muscle. So you're starting to get coordinated rhythmic contractions, remember at 0.8 second intervals of the pelvic floor and perivaginal muscles. And you're getting those peak cardiovascular responses, all leading to the orgasm, which is a sensory and motor integration. Remember, orgasm is sensory in its very nature. And finally, we move into resolution. And this is where you're getting reduction of the parasympathetic activity. So you've got parasympathetic withdrawal. So there's loss of that nitric oxide and therefore loss of the nitric oxide mediated dilation. You're also getting that sympathetic induced vasoconstriction, so you're getting reduced genital blood flow, and therefore that's leading you back towards baseline. So you're getting de-engorgement of the erectile tissue, return to baseline, but just like I've mentioned quite a number of times now, there is no refractory period in females, so you can restart at the plateau stage on appropriate stimulation. There we go. And we have finished the female sex act.